Welcome back to another DC Breakdown where we're breaking down episode 5 of Critical Role Campaign 3 and seeing what happened in the tense moment aftermath of episode 4. We got a big combat to break down, and one of the player characters is so broken. We're going to talk about some things about that, of maybe why or what, because a lot of this stuff is not public information yet, because I think, and my theory is, this is one of the subclasses from Critical Role that we're talking about here. We got some homebrew action going on. I'm a homebrew DM. Of course, a spoiler warning for campaign 3 episode 5. I'm not going to go into huge story beats and details here. I'm trying to break down the overall dungeon masters, players, all the different types of stuff that I want to talk to you guys about. And a lot of you guys' comments have said that you like this as like a Tox Machina replacement stand-in, and I'm honored by that and love to hear what you guys think about this series, because doing 3 videos a week, one on my main channel, one on my second channel, and now these Critical Role breakdowns, really is a lot, especially as a full-time teacher and full-time writing a book and all this other kind of stuff. So like the video, share it around, let me know what you guys think about it, and I'll keep these things rolling as much as you guys keep liking them. All right, the first clip here, we're picking up after the ambush of what was seeming to maybe be a combat, but there's too many people for it to be a combat. I don't know. Well, and all the stuff we got into about how that thing ended. Is it fair for this to be an ambush and all that kind of stuff? It makes a lot of sense right now because they met up with technically another quest giver, kind of. It's like a Court of Owls, Thieves Guild type meetup with a lot of people. There's no way this was going to be a combat. There's too many people. They're so low level, etc. I really want to know where all the potential branches could have gone if their interactions with the Shadowbaker had gone a little bit better. The NPC they talked to beforehand, they had some really bad rolls and bad things happen, and they didn't leave off on a good note, and then they ran into this situation. But it ended up going pretty well. It went like really well ultimately, but we'd have to talk to Matt himself for that. So we're looking at his first clip here is Yash. Yash is talking to all of them, and you really, as a dungeon master, want to get across this badass vibe, this threatening, not evil, but just this sense of power. You want to get across this power of this person in this group and make it truly feel threatening and dangerous, and this is a really cool way of doing that.
We have to make sure that we don't have to kill you. So I need collateral, if you will. I need each of you to tell me somebody who is important to you and where they live. No harm will come to them, unless you sell one of us out. And if I have to reiterate once again, if anything comes of this in a negative light, your father will likely show up dead, and your friend Fresh Cut Grass will probably end up, well, Fresh Cut Grass.
Okay, a couple things here to break down. This person, this Yash individual, they need to have an air of power about them and need to put stakes on the table. He picks Dorian, Ashton, and Imogen and asks them for important people. And it is interesting in this group that not a lot of them have these ties to their past or family, or maybe they didn't want to show that here, because how the whole thing went down is Imogen threw her dad's name out. Whoa, okay. And we saw what happened there. That was a real one. We'll see if that comes back in. And then Ashton threw out Fresh Cut Grass, one of the other party members, right? So probably this character doesn't seem like he has a whole bunch. And this is also, we've all been there, dungeon masters, the players that don't give us any backstory or anyone from their past for us to kill potentially. Okay, so then he goes to the third person, and this is where some interesting things I want to break down is Dorian's like, all the people around me are the ones that are close to me. And okay, so now it's the rest of the groups are in the same situation. So essentially, out of 3 people he asked, one person said one, and he's like, that's not enough collateral. So the Yash, this villain NPC type person, did not accept Dorian's answer of the rest of the group as my collateral, even though just before that, the second option was admitted whenever Ashton said one of the other players is my collateral. He accepted that. He's like, okay, fine, next person. And he moved on. I'm saying this is because it was the last person. So as a dungeon master, we have 3 people. First person gives us one, second person doesn't really, it's almost like a cop out. Okay, I'm going to be more lenient on the second person. So Matt, playing this NPC, he lets that slide because we're going for that last person. Who's Dorian going to say? Ooh, backstory, do we know anything? I don't know. Or if somebody else going to offer up somebody from theirs, I don't know. And he can't let this one slide, even though it's the same thing he just let slide. You know what I mean? So there's really three things going on here. There's a bartering deal back and forth about this collateral, and he's trying to get collateral on them so that they feel this sense of worry about what could possibly happen to these people. And he doesn't really get a lot. And I'm really drawing a blank because I don't know these characters' backstories and who they potentially even have to throw out there at all, because it doesn't seem like they have a lot of family background or people that they know. The second is Matt's trying to get this power across of this villain character that he could just kill any of these people at any moment. So fresh cut grass being on the table actually is kind of a cool thing. It works out. So fresh cut grass is being targeted, her father's being targeted, and he needs some more. And then there's some more banter back and forth and everything, and he ends up letting it slide to be, this is the situation. And the third thing is now they have stakes of some kind where people's lives are on the line if they rub them the wrong way. So I thought Matt did a really great job of role-playing this type of villain, but he's so charismatic, but he's going to kill your father, and it's just like a fact. And so it was a really cool villain to not be over the top, dark and evil. He was very understanding, and he has a whole thing of what he's going. He even explained himself a couple times. He like laughed at what he said and like reset it again, and like super casual, but I'll kill your family. So it was great. The next part we don't need a clip for, but they find a potion or a magic shop, and Advig is a really cool NPC. I love the way that he portrayed them and talked about themselves in third person. That's really cool. Advig presents you with like they said their own name. I thought that was really interesting. I've never done that with an NPC before, so I thought that was cool. But the thing I want to talk about here is the NPCs that we throw in front of our players that are a little sketchy, a little suspicious, you know? It's so fun to play with your players' heads of, is this person straight up or not? Liam, Orym's player, was sold that this person was not up to code. He technically stole one of the magic items, ran off with it, and tried to test to see if it was a magic item. I literally just did this to my party about 5 weeks ago. I had a vendor of magic items and everything, and he had all these magic items, and he was an illusion wizard, and all he would do is to show and display the magic item, he would do some illusion spells, and I would describe, he'd move his hands all over the place and then present it and then this magical effect would happen. And one of the players kind of picked up on it, and so that's a whole nother story. You can listen to that on my second channel. But it was really cool to see this gray area, and I didn't know. I was like, no, I think that he's selling them freaking red water or whatever. These healing potions aren't real. And he sold it to him, and then the magic item was real, but I was like, no, those potions might not be real though. And then he sold it to him, and they were real. So I was like, okay, he got me too. Okay. This is really fun to do as a dungeon master, and I love all three variations. One, you can have a good potion seller that looks evil. I love these alternate things. They look like this super creepy, but they're actually really good. Like they're truly intentional. It's a what's it called? Subverting expectations. There we go. And then there's a very good seller of some kind that actually is evil. And then there's been times before where I on the fly have to improv come up with a magic shop seller or a leatherworker seller, an innkeeper, whatever, and I am just playing the random NPC that's on the back of my dungeon master screen and just kind of improving things on the fly. And they finish their interaction and they're like, wait a second, did you see that thing behind the counter that I mentioned purely made up? And they really latch onto something like, what if that was connected to this? And I'm like, now it is. Great. Awesome. So it's always fun to listen to your players' paranoia, good or bad, and maybe run with it. All right, now we're getting into the combat of this episode, which I can't wait to break down. There's lots of stuff about it. But before the combat happened, there's this intermediate area where they are about to have combat. They don't maybe know that they hear stuff coming. Sometimes we want to be nice as dungeon masters, and we would let them hear that it's coming. And you have this little window to cast some sort of buffs or preparation and get ready for this combat. So then, when you start the combat, you're right into it. You have to take that first round to kind of do some buffing or whatever. So a lot of the players get off a lot of spells, and they really start off the thing. That was good, because this combat, it was pretty rough combat and a pretty cool combat. I'm going to say why my favorite parts of it, and what I think made this combat my favorite combat of the campaign so far. I know it's only been 5 episodes, but Laudna specifically, a lot of players are saying they're doing a lot of different things. Laudna was doing a bunch of stuff. She cast False Life on herself, and she's wanted to cast Hex because they see this creature coming through, and she wanted to try and hex through. Okay, but how much do you let your players get away with during these little times of how much buffs and how many things are they going to be able to get to do? It's basically a surprise round. You got to be careful as Dungeon Master to get out these things because it's like a full-on surprise round to get up all these things. They are going to have a much easier time with the combat. Wherever this combat was at, they're going to be much better off if you give them this window. And after, in hindsight, after seeing this combat play out, it's good that Matt did this because it got pretty rough. And if he didn't allow them to do this little pre-buff phase, it probably would have been a little worse. Here we go.
Question, I said hex right before break. Did I get the hex or did I not get the hex?
The proximity of events was these things were happening as you were all taking your 1 round to prepare.
Okay.
In which you cast false life on yourself.
Okay.
So by the time you would have seen him to begin like casting is when initiative would have kicked in essentially. Okay. But you can on your turn when we get to it.
Yes, perfectly done. The things I want to break down about this is this happens all the time whenever players have certain things that they want to have happen, right? The players want to do cool stuff, right? And we want to let them do cool stuff, but we don't want to let them break the game or do too much or this person did this and all that. We want to be fair. One of the big themes about this little video right now is fair, right? So Matt does a great job, like I talked about at the end of last time, of you want to be able to explain yourself as a dungeon master, not because you have to or like your players deserve an explanation. This is a mutual thing. It's nothing hostile like that. It's a mutual understanding of fairness and they want to be heard and you want to be heard and all this stuff. So Matt did a great job of explaining, I'm saying no, but here's why. And then you can even see Marisha's face like, I cast false light. And everything's good, right? And that the player's not going to have a bad taste in their mouth from some ruling that you made. So whenever you make your rulings, you got to balance this out because you don't want to go, okay, well, you see here, this is my ruling, but don't do that. Find that right balance of explaining where your head's at and why you made the rule you did, because you did your spell, they did their spells. Here we go. You can cast, and then he even follows it up with a nice, this is his wife he's talking to. So, there you go. But he follows it up with a nice loving little, but you can do that on your turn. And now for the combat. I'm going to put a picture somewhere up here with the combat and the map, and you can kind of see what's going on here, because the MVP of this combat is the terrain. And I'm not talking about the physical terrain that they're actually playing on, because you could make that digitally with black box. But for real, it's the mechanics of the terrain, taking your combats to the next level with terrain and the mechanics of what's going on. They fought this same fight before, just for the record. If you think 2 fights ago or whatever, they fought this exact bad guy, and they also fought shade creepers. This is a repeat fight, basically, which I was like, oh no, this is gonna be, could be very lame if it's the same person with the same mechanics, and he does have the same mechanics, which get a little weird later on, because they actually didn't fully fight him last time, so we get to see the full capabilities of this main villain. And shade creepers come back. Okay, cool. Repeat mob, whatever. That's fine. But the terrain is so cool. Here's the different stuff that this terrain does, and some stuff that inspired me. So the terrain in this combat was furniture. Once again, the first combat of the campaign was furniture. Now we have furniture again. There's furniture all over the place. It is difficult terrain amounts worth of furniture, and there's this slimy film in certain little sections of the floor covering everywhere. Ooh, gross. There's a time when Ashton was going across the room, and yes, of course, it's going to be double difficult terrain movement for stepping on the actual obstacles and stuff, but I swear there was a time where they walked across the actual floor and Matt ruled the whole thing as difficult terrain just because there's furniture everywhere. So this was interesting to me purely from, if you think of the room, and let's say there's a zigzag pattern, right? And there's furniture everywhere. Technically, you should be able to run normal movement speed across and you'd be fine. Or you could do difficult terrain moving across the objects, right? But in this moment, I've never thought of difficult terrain like this, where there's obstacles all over the place and the whole thing's just difficult terrain, right? Like the entire room is difficult terrain, even moving in the spots that don't have literal pieces of furniture there. So I just saw this as being a really punishing room. I was like, wow, the actual floor is difficult terrain and there's obstacles to have to move away from. This is a small space map, but man, there's going to be a lot of tactics and movement running around. It's going to be hard to get or move around this place. But then there were times later in the fight where they'd run across an entire open, maybe it's because it was wider space to go, and they moved their full 30 feet without difficult terrain. So I don't know if it was only limited to certain sections or the specific spot that Ashton was running across, but in general, it just got me to open up my mind to difficult terrain is just, the room is messy. it's difficult, which is honestly really clean and smooth because you can just move across the battlefield at difficult terrain and not have to keep like making checks to climb on certain things. You just describe, and I'm going from here to here. It's difficult terrain, and I moved over a table or whatever, and they can describe it from there instead of having to make checks on top of tables or whatever you'd have to do as a dungeon master. Too many checks like that can get annoying and all that kind of stuff. So it was actually really smooth, and I liked the difficult terrain here. And that's not it. This slime on the floor, there was a strength saving throw whenever you had to step in the slime, or it would stop you and hold you in place. And there was 2 different trapdoors that were spawning shade creepers. Whenever the fight first started, there was only 1 shade creeper. I was like, oh wow, that's not enough. But now there's shade creepers that come in each round, 2 different spots, and they weren't really addressing it at first, and they threw some caltrops down. They had a really cool moment, a creative moment with caltrops, but we'll talk about the caltrops here in a second. But now look at this terrain. It is difficult terrain with all different types of furniture all over the place, which could be cool for some potential combat moves and maneuvers. And there's a big thunder explosion, and the furniture breaks and stuff. It leads to some cool imagery in your head. And then there's this slime on the floor with strength saving throws, and then there's enemies that are spawning in through these 2 little openings. This fight is so cool, and I'm saying it's pretty much because of the terrain. Like, the terrain elevated it so much. It was so cool because of that. And the boss was able to release some cool abilities like this little slime cone effect, and the slime cone effect, almost like a breath weapon type situation. The slime spit effect added more slime to the ground, which further added increase to the terrain. So the boss's abilities were adding to the terrain. It was great. And one more thing about this terrain is the strength saving throw. I love this strength saving throw because it hamstrung multiple players with low strength scores, because as your players, as the dungeon master, you want to set your players up for success and set them up for failure. That might sound real bad coming out of my mouth right now, but you want to show them if they have a struggle of some kind, like Laudna's character is very weak in strength. You want to introduce things where strength has a weakness she would not shine in because someone else at the table would. Other strong players would. And one of those would be Ashton, but we'll talk about he's shining maybe too much. We'll get into that in here in just a second. But you want to put things in front of your players where some of them aren't built for it and some of them are. And you want to build encounters around that and keep that in your minds of like, who do I want to make shine? Where should the struggles be? Now, careful to not build encounters based around, I want to target this player's weaknesses. You're going to hate that. No. But those players with low strength scores, including Orym, the frontline fighter, doesn't have really high strength score. They had to think, and they had some sticky situations that they got into. Now we can talk about those caltrops. So this clip right here is Dorian at some point had put down caltrops in front of one of the entrances. That's awesome. Instead of shutting the entrance, when they come out, they'll take damage from coming out of the entrance. Wow, that's a really awesome creative idea, and they're going to take damage, etc., etc. But there's not a rules lawyer, because Robbie's awesome. I really do love Robbie. Robbie as a player is a really cool player, but he has a situation where he has a rules question. Let's check it out.
Those are really messing up their entrances.
Does it have to do that deck save thing when you do it? I think it's 15, and then their movement speed is reduced if they fail. Should I double check that?
Obscure rule check.
That would be I'm saying for this, here's the thing. I'm doing this differently for the caltrops because this isn't so much like trying to run past it.
Right.
This is creatures scrambling up a really short space and then kind of grinding into them and pulling their way through. So this is slowing their movement regardless. They have no way to avoid it as they emerge. And they take a little bit of damage as they come through. Okay. But but at this point, the caltrops have been used. Like 3 of them have come through, and they've all been kind of steadily damaged as they do. Yeah. All right. Finishing that arrival, Ashton, you're up with Imogen on deck.
Love it. Love it. Yes, yes, yes. A homebrew mechanic for using a caltrop in a different way. So instead of a dexterity saving throw, it just immediately happened. I talked about this in episode 3 breakdown, where this dexterity saving throw thing, Fern swallowed the creature, and then it was still a dexterity saving throw. Reflavor to, like, that's a homebrew reflavoring to a constitution saving throw, because it's inside you. You know what I'm saying? So this is a great example of caltrops, which should be a dexterity save for lower movement, and Matt ruled it as automatic damage because it's a creative, awesome idea that Robbie had. And eventually, though, they will run out. You're not just kind of an infinite amount of damage sources that keep just getting shredded up, right? The caltrops get displaced, they get stabbed into them, whatever. This is basically what Matt's saying without saying exactly this. You had a great creative idea, so I broke the game's rules and made some homebrew rules up for what would make sense and rewarded you for it. But it doesn't last for forever. It's only been 3 rounds. That's some automatic damage. Good job. Here we go. And now we're here. It's time to break down something that's already broken. Ashton the Barbarian, whatever gravity dunamancy subclass he's got going on there. It's not been fully released yet. A lot of the stuff about this character, I don't know if it's magic items that they get beforehand, other homebrew little tweaks, maybe feats that they have or whatever. We can only know so much. So until we have all that information, and I think we're gonna get a lot of information in the Critical Role book that's coming out soon, but I'm getting early access to that book, so I will be breaking that down. But I got 2 clips for you with specifically Ashton involved. Then we'll get into what my thoughts are in this whole thing, because I've seen a lot of different people saying like, oh, it's too strong, but I want to really try and put my finger on what's going on here. This clip though is not necessarily a broken Ashton moment. This is a flanking and advantage stacking, because advantage can't stack and it just feels bad. You'll see.
I'm moving around,
Like half standing on the bench there as Duggar's right
getting
there.
up, setting up, and I'm going to take and I'm also going to make this a reckless attack.
Okay. And you haven't flanked.
Oh, fair point. So, never mind.
I have to interject here and say these are the types of moments that where I create homebrews from. These moments of like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know also that Critical Role did the advantage flanking thing. I think personally that rule is giving out advantage far too easily. Look, they're a party of 7, 8 whenever Travis eventually comes back, whenever that is. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. Come on. But it's so easy to get advantage if you allow it just from flanking. So anyway, that's a whole nother side note. But he gets advantage from flanking. Okay. And then he wants to do a reckless attack, but then he doesn't because he already has advantage on the thing. I don't know. And is this meta or not? Okay, I'm not even worried about the meta components here. I think what you would get advantage as a barbarian because you go all in. You drop your defenses, you lower your guard, and you're going all in on this person to make sure you hit them. You don't care if they hit you back, right? That still applies with flanking. Like those stack. You would hit them better if you were behind them doing that than if you were next to them doing that or whatever. So those moments, those stack. You should have a better chance to hit when both of those happen. And if you had a guiding bolt cast on the target and then they're glowing with this energy helping you really hit them, that also should add into this whole effect thing, right? Which is why at my tables I do advantage stacking. It's one of the earlier homebrews I even talked about on this channel, where once you have advantage, okay, cool, but every single advantage you get on top of that is just a simple +2. And you just keep adding it up. And we're going to get into one of the things Matt said here is, I love combo. Matt said this, we'll get to the clip here in a minute, but combo moves. If y'all want to do combo moves together and like combine stuff together, I'm open and I'm down for it, right? So Matt says that, right? The way I do that at my table is whenever cool combo stuff happens, whether it's yourself adding cool combos together creatively or working together in some sort of way, cool, you can grant yourself these extra bonuses to be able to have, like, it should really hit. So I'm just saying it feels bad whenever you purposely choose not to do a reckless attack because you're attacked behind. So technically you already have advantage. That just feels like a really clunky thing and just rubs me the wrong way, just myself personally. But ultimately I wouldn't have given advantage for flanking in the first place, and then he just would have got advantage for it. But anyway, now this clip is where Orym and Ashton together break the game, because Ashton has something that's crazy we'll talk about here in a second, and Orym has something. You'll see the combo, but basically Orym has a goading attack, which is an attack against a target, and they aren't forced to attack you, but attacks against anyone else besides you are at disadvantage because you're like taunting them to attack you. It's a cool fighter thing, cool. So one-on-one, disadvantage to anyone else. But Ashton has this crazy ability that has an aura of this gravity aura. I'll go ahead and say it now. He has a gravity aura where at the top of the round, things are pulled towards him 10 feet. Whoa, that's that's multiple things. I haven't seen it be done to multiple things. Maybe it's only one. I don't know. But either way, it's like a very large gravity aura, like 20 feet or something, and you are pulled in 10 feet towards him. That's crazy. Or maybe it's 15 feet and you're pulled in right next to him. I don't know. And also has a tanking property to it where any attacks not at you are a disadvantage. So if there's ever a time in a combat where these two characters are standing next to each other and Orym goading attacks him to get disadvantage, he would be able to attack this target, but Ashton puts disadvantage because he didn't attack him. So no matter who he attacks, it's a disadvantage no matter what. This combo and how easy it is to pull it off is kind of game breaking for me. And I know I've said this all the time. It's like, oh, we're the dungeon masters. We can come up with other things. If a character has too high of an armor class, oh no, that's really bad. If a character has too high of health, they actually said, we talked about Ashton at the end of this episode. Ashton rolled for health and rolled a 12 out of 12, and he has a whole bunch of hit points now. And he's like, oh, I have too many hit points. So even on that level, he's overpowered. But there are ways as dungeon masters to bypass things where certain players get certain strengths and they're really good at this or they're really good at that. You can come up with creative challenges and ways to push them. But this just seems like a very easy thing to pull off, to just give you disadvantage to so many things, and all these creatures are just rolling at disadvantage. That just feels a bit much to me. And if I was a dungeon master and I had this at my table, I'd be like, how did this happen? Oh my goodness, this is a bit much. I think the focus is on Ashton's character and this aura of disadvantage that he has. I don't know the mechanics to it, so I can't really go into too much as far as like, oh, it should just be this or that, and I'd have to really see it. And I will go through all of that whenever I get my hands on the book to see what's really going on here and offer up my adjustments. Here's my list of some things that I've compiled of why Ashton is crazy strong, even compared to anybody else at the table. He's nuts. His damage, I think he averages like 20 damage for what he does at level 3. It's crazy. So, and I'm sure somebody's broken down the math further than I have on this, but here we go. I think he has to have a +2, maybe a +3 magic item. I think it's a +2, and there's some other floating +1 that I don't know about, but he rolled a 27 during combat. He rolled a 27. All the time we're like, oh, it's 27 to hit. Haha, that hits. If you roll a 27 to hit, that means you didn't roll a 20, which means he has more than a +7. You see how I'm going at with this? If he rolled a 27 and it wasn't a crit, because if you roll a crit, you make that known at the table during combat. It's double damage. Come on. So he rolled a 19, and if you end up with a 27, and that's a +8, he has a +8 to hit at level 3, and his strength score is +3, and he's a level 5, which is 2 proficiency, which brings us to 5. And then where's the other 3 coming from? Then there's another point in this episode where he said something about his dice, and I was able to do some backwards math, and he at least has a +2 magic item on top of all this. So maybe that's also another reason why he's also dealing this kind of damage and hitting so often. And he has this gravity thing going on with his aura that he has that gives disadvantage to things, pulls them in, and he has a divine smite chaos burst that he can choose to activate into hits or not, and into crits or not. And he's a barbarian that's raging, so that's already off the deep end already. But this thing is powerful. So in general, if this was up to me, I probably would just remove the Chaos Burst type thing of this Divine Smite added in there. That's a Paladin type thing. Just leave that for the Paladins, right? I would remove that and have some sort of, I think there's a random table because he does roll on initiative. There's some sort of, sometimes he looks this way or sometimes not. I think there may be 2 settings to where he has a Dunamance, or from Dunamance, he has a gravity setting and a time setting. I don't know. My favorite Barbarian subclass is Wild Magic. So I do like that there's some sort of randomness going on here, and it feels right for this, and I might play that up more. There's a lot of variables here, but in general, I think we could all agree it's pretty strong. Ooh, but I'll save my homebrew breakdown and possible adjustments of whatever I'd make once I can see the whole thing of what's going on there, what I'm working with, and what type of things I may or may not do. So on to the next clip is the thing about Matt talking about combo moves, and he loves combo moves. This part spoke to me so much. I do the same exact thing. It was beautiful. Roll the clip.
So, cool effect. If something like, which for the record, combining effects like that in spells, all for it. If it manages to succeed on both sides, bonus damage, fun little things there. So, always down for combo stuff.
He said this in response to some sort of combo that they tried to pull off that didn't really work out, but it could have been cool. Ooh, I don't know. So, I do the same thing. Anytime they have some sort of cool combo they want to do in ways, I allow players to hold their turns and initiative to be able to go together, and then they can actually act on the same time. That feels super awesome. Whatever. But I really loved that this happened at the table where they tried to do a combo, it didn't work, and there's the, dang it. There's that moment at the table. So that's a great pulse check as a Dungeon Master to sweep in there when players are like, oh man, that feels bad, right? Matt sweeped in there, loved him up, kind of like, hey guys, if that could have been super cool. Like if it happens, I'm totally down. I'm adding extra stuff, but it has to happen both sides. Let's see it happen next time. I love that homebrew improv type stuff. So props to you, Matt. And I think I do have a whole video I'll put down in the description about combo moves and combat and like throwing each other and all that other kind of stuff. 2 more big moments in this combat towards the very end. Things were getting tense. They was killed the final boss guy, had a shade creeper popped out of its back like a little pus pocket. It was Ooh, gross. Which is props to the whole vibe of what was going on here in this nasty slime on the ground and the creature itself and how he entered into the whole thing, and very great descriptions across the board, of course. But 2 players went unconscious. Fern went unconscious and Imogen went unconscious and failed 2 death saves from a melee attack right at her because Matt said they are both going after you and they're both going to make attacks on you. And anytime he declares something like that, these crazed type creatures, the first creature took her down and the second creature, 2 death saving throw fails, right? So that, and there's a moment at the table where he's like, would this creature attack? Matt paused and he's thinking. In fact, let's show that clip.
Technically, it would be
Makes
right.
sense.
Both real angry at you, Imogen. First one's going to strike at you. It's an 18 to hit.
That hits.
All right.
I'm done.
You take 5 points of piercing damage
Oh no.
and 6 points of necrotic.
You down?
I can take 3 points of that. Will
Doesn't
that make it matter? No.
Homebrew empathy cleric.
Falls unconscious as one of them leaps up and just streaks its claws across her chest.
I might have pissed them off enough.
I yell.
This is bad.
I'm gonna yell right in their face.
Now the other one, because they're both going for you
Yeah,
and they're mindless creatures, the other one's going to go ahead and attack you.
Might be dead.
Can I fucking?
Look at this.
Yeah,
No,
you take 2 death saving throws. As you fall to the ground, the other one just starts clawing into you. And they're both just tearing into an unconscious Imogen. You see just blood
Look at
streaks
everybody.
flying as they are just gone feral on her.
So we need to heal now and not attack those things.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
finishes
Liam's standing up. Here
their
we
turn.
go.
Orym, you're up.
I'm so glad I showed that clip because look, Matt, there's this moment at the table and you see Taliesin go, I yell at them. They're trying to save her and she falls. And the second one, what do? Do they attack the barbarian that's standing there? Do they shred into her? And Matt's like, no, they go for her. Right? Tough call as a dungeon master. Do you go for the kill in these types of moments? Yes, you do. 100%. They have not had a moment like this yet in the campaign. One of the characters died and all that kind of stuff, but that was like a scripted death. So this hasn't really happened. Characters have fallen unconscious, but not this. 2 death saving throw fails. They're out to get, like, this is bad. Like, yes, Orym's turn is next and he ends up coming over with a healing potion. Matt knows this. Matt knows that there's multiple people that have healing spells and healing potions to be able to do something. He knows when the Shade Creepers go, and the Shade Creepers just went. The Shade Creepers just went. They have an entire turn because the boss is dead now. They have an entire turn. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. So, yes, you do this moment. Give those players the reaction you just saw that they had so that they feel it, that they feel this dread. So, when this combat's over, they feel like they killed it, and that next combat, they feel that value of life and how precious it is. And she almost lost her character. Even though really she kind of didn't really. There's a whole round of 7 players here. There's a whole round. She's going to be okay. It's still a tense fight and it's still really hit or miss, but they're going to be able to pour the healing potion in her, all that kind of stuff, which this also is in general. This is another side homebrew here. I don't have my death saving throws reset whenever they come back up. So if she has 2 death saving throw fails, she goes down. Sure, you're going to be able to get her back up with a healing potion, but she still has 2 death saving throw fails, usually until the combat's lifted and then they reset. But that, oh, I love that moment of tension. This was a really great moment to see at session 5. You want to get these feelings in there so that your players really feel that. Love it. And now we got a third person that goes down at the very end. Fresh cut grass has a really cool moment where there's a shade creeper and it's around this. They explode when they die, right? So they're around this spot where Imogen is and all these people are. And then fresh cut grass is off to the side. He's super low on health. He shoots his little grappling hook. It hits the creature and kills it. But part of his grappling hook thing is he pulls it 10 feet towards him, or I think maybe more than that. And he gets to choose. So I'll let you see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I'll allow you to choose. You have to let it die where it was or die towards you.
Die towards me.
Okay. So as you pierce it and pull it backward through the air, it begins to burn into cinder as it comes towards you and splashes you once more in the front. Make a dexterity saving throw.
Splashes and splashes.
6 points of fire damage because you failed.
Oh no.
I'm down.
How do you heal a robot?
Do we have a potion? Well, you use
Does a potion work?
Disassemble.
Are we still in combat? Yeah.
Still in combat.
So a few things here is he got to choose. Love that moment. Love that Matt gave him that choice. And in a very fitting way, the empathy cleric chose to take the damage. themselves, right? Great moment. And it killed them. Awesome, right? They go unconscious once again. And now we have an unconscious robot on the ground. So in general, I do love that Matt gave him that choice, and he made the choice his character would. It was great, great, great. So now we get into a robot. You have an automaton. Can they take healing potions? I would say no. I think that's a really interesting thing. I think they are a robot, unless you can explain some sort of way that your healing potions heal the spirit. I don't know how you'd want to explain your game. I could think of some magical explanations as to why it's just heals everything or whatever. But in my homebrew game tables, and I go into this on my second channel and stuff, I have a Warforged. The Warforged in the party cannot be healed by normal healing. We talked about this with the player. If you think that's crazy and I'm an evil DM dungeon, I talked to the player and we all talked about it as a group. He is not able to be healed by normal healing or healing potions. He has his own thing that he does for that. There is an artificer in the group that can heal him. Awesome, awesome, cool. And he has his own mechanisms that can heal him, basically like a short second wind that he gets to be able to do. So he has a little bit of that. He has his hit dice, which I make very important in my games and especially for him. And the artificer has some things. She has a mending cantrip that she can use in some sort of ways to heal, but it's limited to how often she can do it, and she has to make a check, etc., etc. But I think it's really cool that when he goes down, wait a second. The artificer's the only one that can heal him. The druid can't heal him. Oh no. But then this happens at the table.
I'll cast level 1 Cure Wounds.
Go for it. Roll that D8.
+3.
Sorry, it doesn't work on robots.
Only Sam would like hardcore nerf his character to be untenable in D&D.
That is 7 + 3, 10.
Great.
Yeah.
Back to consciousness.
There's more.
Touch grass.
Thank you.
Oh my god.
Alrighty.
God, those two
Don't
death.
put FCG in the bathtub.
We need a real healer. He's a little robot Jesus.
Well, Smiley Day, who are you all?
Do not.
No, lion.
Just kidding, y'all.
Oh my god.
Nice flex.
Amazing.
Amazing for sure. That's so funny that he presses a reset button. Oh my gosh. Wow. I love stuff like that though. I think it'd be really cool to see that be. Now it would be a huge nerf and a huge, do they want to deal with that? Does your group want to have to deal with that type of challenge, right? Mine said, yes, there's 4 players. One of them is a rope. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting challenge. This would be a lot. And they go into some crazy stuff. And he's the healer, he's the cleric. So if he goes out, now they have to have some sort, but then that's a cool challenge to overcome. Maybe he has to create some sort of automaton only healing potions and go find those and then give each person in the group one of their own little fresh cut grass healing potion only type things. That would be really interesting. Unless you think it sounds terrible, then don't do it for your group. So what did you think about this episode? Comment down below. Let me know what's going on there. If you want to like the stuff I do and like the different breakdowns or the different ideas that I have about the Wild Magic Barbarian, I have a whole Wild Magic system of the D300 Wild Magic table. It's over on my website. I make monthly PDFs over on my Patreon. I got a ton of different stuff here. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I really do want to keep doing these things, but as time is just hard. There's not a lot of time. 3 videos, monthly PDFs, and writing an Alcantar's Almanac book combined with a full-time teaching job. That's a lot. And as all of this keeps going and as big as it can possibly get, there's trying to go see if we can do this thing full time. And then, yeah, let's keep the videos rolling. And then I want to stream my own games and try and show and break down some things that I do myself, where I mess up, where I have cool moments, etc. So comment down below, like the video, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching to this point. If you're seeing me say this, stay creative, think outside the box. Peace.